Most people believe wealth is built through large amounts of money. They imagine that becoming financially successful requires a high income, a major inheritance, or a lucky investment that generates extraordinary returns. Because of this belief, many people delay investing altogether. They convince themselves that small amounts are insignificant, and that meaningful wealth can only begin once they have more money available. This assumption quietly prevents millions of people from building financial freedom. The truth is that wealth is often created in a completely different way. Many of the largest fortunes built through investing did not begin with large sums of money. They began with small, consistent investments repeated over long periods of time. The amounts were often ordinary. What made them extraordinary was the amount of time they were allowed to grow. This is one of the most misunderstood principles in personal finance. Human beings naturally focus on size. We pay attention to large numbers because they appear important. A person investing $10,000 immediately seems more impressive than someone investing $100 every month. Yet investing is not simply about size. It is about accumulation, consistency, and compounding. Compounding is what transforms small investments into significant wealth. At first, the process appears almost disappointing. Small investments produce small results. The account balance grows slowly. Progress feels invisible. Many people become frustrated because they expect visible change immediately. But compounding operates differently than most people expect. In the beginning, growth is slow because the investment base is small. Returns are being generated, but the numbers appear modest. Then those returns begin generating additional returns. The process gradually accelerates. Over time, growth starts building on itself. The remarkable part is that the majority of compounding's power often appears much later. This creates a psychological challenge. Most people judge investing during the early stages, exactly, and the results are least impressive. They look at a small portfolio and conclude that the process is not working. They compare their progress to unrealistic expectations and become discouraged. As a result, they stop. Ironically, they abandon the process shortly before compounding begins, becoming more noticeable. Successful investors understand something important. The early years are not about visible wealth. They are about building the foundation that future wealth will stand upon. Every contribution matters. Every month matters. Every year matters. The individual deposits may seem insignificant, but they are quietly creating the conditions necessary for future growth. Imagine planting a tree. During the first years, visible growth may seem minimal. Most of the development occurs beneath the surface. Roots spread. Structure strengthens. The process feels slow. Yet those invisible years are essential. Without them, the tree could never support significant growth later. Investing works in a remarkably similar way. The early years create financial roots. Small investments establish habits. Consistency develops discipline. Time begins working. And while very little appears to be happening, the foundation becomes stronger with every contribution. Another reason small investments become powerful is because they reduce psychological resistance. Many people never begin investing because they believe they must start with large amounts of money. The perceived requirement feels overwhelming. They postpone action while waiting for better circumstances. But small investments remove this barrier. A modest contribution feels manageable. It allows individuals to begin immediately instead of waiting indefinitely. And beginning matters more than most people realize. The greatest advantage an investor can possess is often not higher returns. It is more time. Someone who starts small today frequently achieves better results than someone who delays for years, while waiting to invest larger amounts later. Time amplifies consistency. The earlier investments begin, the more opportunities compounding has to work. This is why small investments frequently outperform expectations over long periods. They may not appear powerful individually, but collectively, they create momentum. Every contribution adds to the base. Every contribution creates future growth potential. Every contribution strengthens the compounding process. Most people focus on how much they can invest. Successful investors focus on how consistently they can invest. This distinction changes everything. Consistency transforms investing from an occasional event into a long-term system. Systems produce results because they continue functioning even when motivation disappears. People experience periods of enthusiasm and periods of doubt. They feel optimistic one month and uncertain the next. If investing depends entirely on emotions, consistency becomes impossible. But when investing becomes automatic, progress continues regardless of temporary feelings. This is one of the hidden reasons small investments become so powerful. They encourage consistency, and consistency allows time to do what time does best. Multiply small actions into large outcomes. The world often celebrates dramatic success stories. It highlights overnight fortunes, sudden breakthroughs, and extraordinary gains. Yet most lasting wealth is built differently. It is built quietly. It is built gradually. It is built through decisions that seem insignificant in the moment. Small investments may not attract attention today, but given enough time, they can create results that once appeared impossible. That is the hidden power most people never fully appreciate. Small investments are not small when time is allowed to magnify them. The transformation from small investments to massive wealth does not happen because of luck. It happens because of mathematics, discipline, and time working together for years. Yet most people never experience the full power of this process because they underestimate how long meaningful wealth creation actually takes. This misunderstanding creates one of the greatest obstacles in investing. People start with enthusiasm. They contribute regularly for a period of time. Then they look at the results and become disappointed. The numbers appear too small. Progress feels too slow. The future seems too far away. What they fail to realize is that wealth creation often follows a pattern that feels frustrating in the beginning but becomes extraordinary later. The early stage is dominated by contributions. Most of the account value comes from money being deposited rather than investment growth. This causes many investors to believe the investments themselves are not accomplishing much. But something important is happening beneath the surface. Every contribution increases the amount of capital capable of generating future returns. Every month creates a larger foundation. Every year strengthens the compounding process. Eventually, a remarkable shift occurs. Investment growth begins contributing more than new deposits. For many investors, this moment feels surprising. The portfolio starts growing faster than before even though the contribution amount remains the same. This is the point where compounding begins revealing its true power. Money starts working harder than the investor. The growth generated by the investments becomes larger than the effort required to create the original contributions. This transition is one of the most important milestones in wealth building. Unfortunately, most people never reach it because they stop too early. They become discouraged during the slow years. They abandon consistency before momentum develops. They judge the process before the process has enough time to work. Smart investors understand that patience is not simply a virtue in investing. It is a requirement. Without patience, compounding never reaches its full potential. Without patience, small investments remain small. Without patience, time never has an opportunity to create extraordinary outcomes. This is why wealthy investors often appear unusually calm. They understand that meaningful wealth rarely arrives quickly. They know that financial success is often the result of remaining consistent, while others become impatient. Another reason small investments become powerful over time is because they shape behavior. Most people assume investing is primarily about money. In reality, investing is also about habits. A person who invests regularly begins thinking differently about income. They stop viewing every dollar as something that must be spent immediately. Instead, they begin recognizing future value. Every contribution becomes a reminder that money can be used for growth rather than consumption. This mindset gradually changes financial decisions. Spending becomes more intentional, saving becomes easier, long-term thinking becomes natural, and these behavioral changes often become just as valuable as investment returns themselves. Over decades, the combination of improved habits and compounding growth creates enormous advantages. This is why two people earning similar incomes can experience completely different financial futures. One person spends almost everything they earn. The other consistently invests a portion. At first, the difference appears insignificant. Years later, the difference becomes substantial. Decades later, the difference can be life-changing. The gap was not created by a single decision. It was created by thousands of small decisions repeated consistently. Another hidden advantage of small investments is flexibility. Large investments often feel intimidating. People worry about making mistakes. They fear losses. They hesitate because the stakes appear high. Small investments reduce this pressure. They allow individuals to gain experience gradually. Confidence grows over time. Knowledge develops naturally. The investor learns through participation rather than endless preparation. This is important because action creates progress. Many people spend years studying investing without ever beginning. They wait for perfect knowledge. They wait for perfect confidence. They wait for perfect timing. Meanwhile, time continues passing. The investors who start small gain something far more valuable than perfect preparation. They gain experience. And experience combined with consistency often produces better outcomes than waiting indefinitely for ideal conditions. Perhaps the most surprising aspect of investing is how ordinary the process feels. While wealth is being created, there are no dramatic moments most of the time. There is no daily excitement. There is no constant feeling of success. The process is repetitive. Contributions continue. Time passes. Growth accumulates slowly. Then eventually the results become visible. People look at the outcome and assume something extraordinary happened. In reality, extraordinary outcomes were created by ordinary actions repeated consistently. This is the true secret behind massive wealth. It is rarely the product of one perfect investment. It is rarely the result of extraordinary intelligence. It is rarely created by predicting the future correctly. More often, it is created by respecting simple principles for an extraordinarily long time. Invest consistently. Stay patient. Allow compounding to work. Avoid unnecessary interruptions. Give time the opportunity to magnify small actions, because time changes everything in investing. A small contribution today may seem insignificant. A year of contributions may feel modest. Even several years may not appear life-changing. The decades tell a different story. Decades allow compounding to transform ordinary decisions into remarkable outcomes. Decades allow small investments to become large portfolios. Decades allow discipline to become financial freedom. This is why the wealthiest investors rarely underestimate small beginnings. They understand something most people overlook. Massive wealth is often nothing more than small investments that were given enough time to grow. And the people who recognize this truth early gain an advantage that becomes increasingly powerful. With every passing year,